I thought this was the key indelible lesson of the 1940s, that when governments decide that some people don't have human rights because of their genetic makeup, it winds up with mass murder, and it's bad for everybody. And so we're never doing that again. We're never going to allow any demagogue or group of demagogues to say that group right there is not entitled to human rights and we're going to hurt them. I thought that was the lesson. I'm 55. I grew up in a country that, remember that?
Let me tell you something. This law in Ukraine, Law 3894, is one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation I've ever seen. And it's not alone. In Estonia, they're attempting to destroy the Russian Orthodox Church. These Baltic countries that are bulwarks of freedom and democracy are going after those churches too. And even though those churches are not separate from Russian, I recognize that. And yes, the Russian Orthodox Church has been instrumentalized. I agree. I still say under a rule of law state, you go after those people who commit offenses. You do not ban a church.
If you start banning people's religions, then how are you better than what you oppose?
Exactly. And yet the Religious Freedom Conference honors the very author of this insane legislation.
Who sponsored this conference?
It's, all I know is I think there's a chairman who's a former Republican senator. I think it's made up of charitable donations. I haven't studied who the sponsor is. I'm sure there's U.S. government involvement. Mr. Vance, Vice President Vance spoke very well. I mean, he's, as I said before, I mean, he's set off a revolution in Europe with his speech, which I welcome. Because I believe he's identified a tremendous problem in Europe in terms of freedom of speech and the basic freedoms. Although I have to say, working in Georgia, working and knowing what's happening in Transnistria, you cannot minimize the threat of Vladimir Putin. It exists.
Lent is here, the period before Easter, the 40 days, and it's a unique chance to get closer to God. That's the point of it. Hallow, the world's #1 prayer app, can help you do that. Joining their Prayer 40 Challenge, it's a great way to connect with Christians all over the world and unite in preparation for Easter, which is the payoff of this season. It's called The Way. It helps participants focus on how Jesus is the way to heaven. If you join the challenge, you'll embark on a spiritual journey with some of America's most convicted Jesus followers. Powerful stories, prayer, you grow in your ability to sacrifice. That's what Lent is. It's a sacrifice. And taking thought-provoking sermons and true stories of faith in action, which are amazing. This year is going to be the best Lent ever. Thousands of people praying together all over the world, and you can be part of it through Hallow, which, by the way, is in use in my house and a nightly topic of conversation. So you can sign up at hallow.com/Tucker when you join. Check out thousands of guided prayers, meditations, music, and everything. There's a ton on Hallow, all designed to help you find peace and closeness to God. Download the Hallow app and jump onto the Lent Pray 40 Challenge right now. So you said that you went up to the U.S. Congress and you tried to get the attention of members. J.D. Vance was the only one who would listen to you out of 100 senators. What about in the House?
Oh, I attended a few meetings, as I said, where I was generally insulted by people. We had very few
insulted.
Yeah, we had very few congressmen who would meet us. We had some very courageous lobbyists who we worked with and still work with, including a former Democrat, Congressman Ron Klink, who, because he's, I think, a devout Christian, has, I think, really suffered a lot reputationally by working with me. And God bless him for having the strength and courage to do that. Because as he knows, I mean, we're completely nonpartisan. We're not actually lobbying the United States at all. We want people to talk to the Ukrainians and simply explain to the Ukrainians that this law to ban our church is unacceptable.
Especially since we're paying for it. Have you ever voted for a Republican in your life?
Never.
So you're not, just wanted to be clear about that. So you were arrested by Putin, and you've never voted Republican. So just want people to understand where you're coming from here.
No. I mean, that's very much where I'm coming from. Though I will say, quite frankly, that I think what's been dangerous about the past few administrations is that their breaks with rule of law have been wildly pronounced but hidden. Whatever you want to say about President Trump, I think that it's far healthier where he does a number of things I disagree with. It's out in the open, and we can address it, attack it if we think it's wrong, but it's out in the open. With the prior administrations, it was all hidden from view, and it was almost impossible to attack, like sanctions. Almost impossible to attack, very difficult to deal with. And this authoritarianism, this denial of the civic space is hugely important.
Yes.
And it's what we in the United States have done to ourselves. I really can barely watch CNN. I understand they have serious problems with President Trump. I get it. But there is a whole world out there. And President Trump has made a tremendous amount of waves in that world. Surely, beyond bashing the guy, we can deal with some of the real problems, like my church, which has never been covered by CNN.
Ever?
Ever. That, to my knowledge.
They cover Ukraine all day long, but they've never mentioned that the government banned a Christian denomination.
Never. Not only the majority church of the country. Let's be clear. And when I went to church, one of my first times in church, but the patriarch of our church insisted that I attend church.
I love that you call it our church.
He insisted I attend the churches because he wanted me to see the difference between our church and the other church. So I went. I went to church after church. Our churches were full. Our priests were like rush hour traffic on a Sunday. I mean, we're having multiple services because there are now so few churches because the other church is stealing them. So when you go to the other church, they're virtually empty. In fact, many of the churches they've stolen, they've turned into museums. I mean, which,
this
by
is
the
like
way,
Soviet. What's going on?
No. And I was in.
They're banning religion and creating a state church in this.
Let me tell you something. I was in the Soviet Union, so I'm older than you. I was in the Soviet Union,
trying to get the Jewish refuseniks out. Correct.
Beginning, just at the beginning. I wasn't a lawyer then or doing much of anything, but I went because I knew this problem existed. I was a very, very young boy, but my father wanted me to go. I think I was one of the only guys. I think I was the first sole traveler to a place called Chisinau, Moldova. This is way back in the 70s. And was interrogated. My first interrogation by the KGB was when I was like 17. So I've had a long history in this region. I went to the Lavra when I was, I studied under Ukraine's greatest historian, Bohdan Badzirkiu. His son is now a noted speaker and expert on Ukraine and very pro-Ukrainian and a very, very serious person. But I went there at the express direction of his father, and I went to the Lavra to just experience this incredible. I mean, the Lavra was incredible, and this has become the scene of these clashes where Zelensky's government has taken the Lavra, control of the Lavra, away from our church and handed it to the nationalist church. So there's this huge nationalism in Ukraine that is the motive behind Zelensky's destruction of my church, and it's political. Our church and the Donbass, the more Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, had supported Zelensky. But with the unfortunate aggression against Ukraine, that voter bloc is denied to him. So he has had to move much further to the xenophobic side of the Ukrainian spectrum to keep his base. And we think that's primarily some of the politics behind him agreeing to the destruction of our church.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.